All right, today we're diving into a machine that honestly looks like it flew straight out of a sci-fi movie, but it was very, very real. We're talking about the legendary SR-71 Blackbird, an aircraft that even now just seems, well, impossible.
Okay, just look at this thing. It's not just an airplane, right? It's a statement. This was developed back in the 1960s, and it was a piece of engineering so far ahead of its time that it still holds records, more than half a century later.
And what a record that is. Let that number sink in for a second. Over 2,100 miles an hour. That is faster than 3 times the speed of sound. At that speed, you could fly from New York to LA in about an hour and a half. Just incredible. So that brings us to the 2 big questions we're going to tackle. The why pulls us deep into the paranoia of the Cold War. And the how? Well, the how pushes the absolute limits of what we thought was possible with technology.
To really get the Blackbird, you first have to understand the problem it was built to solve. It was a time of intense suspicion, and the United States absolutely needed eyes in the sky over the Soviet Union.
Now, they had the U-2 Dragon Lady, which was an amazing aircraft, don't get me wrong. It could fly at 70,000 feet. But Soviet missile technology was catching up fast. So the US knew they needed something new, something that simply could not be touched. And you can see the incredible leap in just thinking by looking at them side by side. On the left, you've got the U-2, which kind of looks like a big powered glider, and on the right, the SR-71 looks like it's from another planet. This wasn't an upgrade, it was a total reinvention of what a plane could be. So the challenge given to Lockheed's secret design group, the Skunk Works, was as simple as it was audacious. Create a plane that could fly so high and so fast that no missile on Earth could ever hope to catch it.
You know, to get that kind of performance, the engineers had to solve one seemingly impossible problem after another. And the first one, the biggest one, was heat.
I mean, think about it. When you're moving that fast, you're creating an insane amount of friction with the air. A normal aluminum airplane? It would just soften and basically fall apart under that kind of stress. And this gives you an idea of just how hot we're talking. At top speed, the front edges of the wings could hit over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to cook a pizza on. The plane would literally start to glow.
So the solution was a metal that was super strong, but also incredibly hard to work with: titanium. And here's the crazy part. At the time, most of it was sourced from the very country they wanted to spy on, the Soviet Union. They actually had to set up fake companies just to buy enough of it.
And they needed a lot of it. The body of this plane was more than 90% titanium. This meant they had to invent completely new tools, new techniques, just to be able to build the thing. It was an absolutely monumental task. Okay, so they figured out how to stop it from melting. That was half the battle. But to be truly untouchable, the Blackbird also had to be a ghost. It had to be invisible. And you can see that in this bizarre alien-like design. This was not about looking cool. This was one of the very first planes designed from the ground up to be incredibly hard to spot on radar.
The whole idea behind stealth is to shrink how big you look on a radar screen. You want to go from looking like a giant plane to looking like a small bird, or even better, not showing up at all.
One of the key tricks was these sharp, flat edges running along the side of the body. They're called chines. And instead of bouncing radar waves straight back to the transmitter, they scattered them away in all different directions, making it almost impossible to get a solid lock. But they didn't stop there. They threw everything at it. They built special radar-absorbing materials right into the plane's skin. That famous black paint, it wasn't just for camouflage, it actually helped radiate all that intense heat away. They even put additives in the fuel to make the exhaust harder to see on radar.
So the Blackbird was tough, and it was sneaky. But its ultimate party trick, its primary defense, was just raw, unbelievable, world-beating speed.
That speed is it's staggering. It flew faster than a bullet from a high-powered rifle. At that speed, the world below you just becomes a blur. And it flew so high that the sky above turned from blue to the black of space, and you could actually see the curve of the Earth. The pilots had to wear full-on pressure suits, basically astronaut suits.
Now think about this for a second. If an enemy ever spotted an SR-71 and fired a missile at it, the pilot's standard procedure was not to dodge or weave. It was to just push the throttle forward and outrun the missile. And in its entire career, not a single SR-71 was ever shot down. So how did this even happen?
How did a machine this revolutionary get created in an age of slide rules and paper blueprints? Well, the answer really lies with the incredible team that built it.
The skunk works. It wasn't your normal engineering department. It was this small, hand-picked crew of brilliant, rule-breaking engineers and mechanics who were given almost total freedom to innovate. They were famous for building things no one else thought was possible, often starting these massive projects on nothing more than a handshake.
You know, the Blackbird was retired back in the late 1990s, but it leaves behind this incredible legacy and a really fascinating question. It was a machine built for a very specific time, for a very specific purpose. But that combination of speed, altitude, and just pure audacity, it's still unmatched. And you have to wonder, what will it take for us to see its like again?